I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. Dumelang, Sawubona, Molo, Uitehane. I think that is the languages I know a little bit about. I hope you have a cup of coffee or a chocolate nearby, because today we're going to cover quite a number of information. But as Samu mentioned, we'll be recording the session. So if you want to go back, please do. So today I will be discussing with you choosing a discipline and topic and selecting a mentor and supervisor. Now, for the young fellows listening in today, this is a very important first step of your research career, that you clearly understand how to choose a discipline and topic and selecting a mentor and a supervisor. And remember also there's a difference between a supervisor and a mentor, but we'll be discussing everything in detail a bit later on. So as I said, also when you plan your career, it is extremely important that you learn. You'll be attending this workshop today, but since we are a bit time limited, I would advise you also to consult other sources on the internet as well, attend other workshops on this topic as well. Elsevier offers a lot of different workshops for career development. There's a lot of books available. There's also a lot of articles available. So always supplement your knowledge with what is being said in a workshop. Okay, and remember, very important, planning your career and your PhD or your master's study is important. And this entails learning, for example, how to choose a topic and how to choose your mentor and your supervisor, because this is extremely important for your success as a student, so that the degree and the study you're doing is smooth and without any difficulties, etc. So what we're going to cover today is basically choosing the topic and the research discipline. So selecting basically the type of research and the research question you're going to tackle when you do your M or your D. Then we need to understand also the different types of methodologies, the types of research that are being conducted nowadays. And finally, how to choose your supervisor and your mentor. Okay. So that we already covered. So this we need to learn today. So let's focus now on choosing the topic and the research discipline. Now, before we even get into that, it's important to understand the type of research landscape that you are finding yourself into. So it's important to go and read, for example, the NRF documents to understand how is research developing, what is hot research, how research is progressing, because the type of research that we did yesterday is changing today. Like, for example, nowadays, transformative type of research and interdisciplinary research is becoming very popular. Why? Because we are sitting with these grand challenges in terms of climate change. There's a lot of different challenges the world is facing, and for us to effectively tackle that as researchers, we need to be more inclusive of different disciplines and be aware of different aspects of research. So, for example, if you look at this document that was advertised via the NRF Impact Literacy Campaign, it's mentioned that transformative research is nowadays very important, and this utilizes basically different methods and approaches. And such type of research, we need to think that our research must be also gender aware. Now, not all research can be gender aware, but we must be cognizant of the fact that we encompass a gender aspect in our research. Some funding agencies, like for example, if you're applying for the Marie Curie Fellowship, they will specifically request that you include in your proposal how you tackle gender. Is there a gender aspect of your work? And then you need to describe it. Then also remember, when you start doing research, or when you, for example, if you're a clinical researcher and you recruit patients, you need to be respectful of diversity and inclusivity, respect different types of religions, cultures, sexual orientations, all of this. So it needs to be inclusive, especially when you're working with human participants if you are a medical researcher. Then very, very importantly, what is the social impact of your research? Nowadays, research needs to start extending beyond only purely academic work. We need to find ways to do research that also has an impact beyond only reproducing knowledge. It needs to empower communities. So that is a very, very important aspect. Then another thing one needs to think about already before you start looking into topics and all of that, we need to understand what is research excellence, right? And how are we going to advance the knowledge? For example, every time we tackle a new research topic, it has to be novel. It has to contribute something to the knowledge base. And for that reason, even before you start selecting a topic, or when you, when you have an idea of the type of research that you're going to do, it's important to, even before you select a topic or when you start looking at different topics, to understand what is out there. You have to do a very good literature survey. Now, the topic of doing a literature survey is also extremely wide. Sometimes libraries will offer a lot of workshops on this topic, how to effectively search the literature. It's also important to search wide sources of literature databases. You get Google Scholar, you get Scopus, you get Science Direct. So it's important to use a diverse set of search engines. Why? Because sometimes Google Scholar may have an article that, for example, Science Direct may not have. So also the other thing that's important when you search the literature to see the gaps in the knowledge and where your work can fit in to contribute to the knowledge base, it's important to use the correct keywords. For example, when you choose keywords, you can look at articles in high impact journals. Then you can kind of get an idea of the keywords people use in your field of interest, and also how you combine that keywords, how you use search strings is also very important. That you can select then specific types of articles and also a more wider scope of papers. Also looking at the dates of the papers is important. For example, looking at older papers and also looking at newer papers. Review papers also provides a very nice overview of your specific topic that which you may be interested in. Then also very important, is your research internationally competitive? This is very important for it to be published, right? Again, the social benefit and the scientific rigor of it. Is it reproducible? Is it ethical? This is extremely important. We'll discuss that also a bit later on. Very important, is it relevant? Is it novel? Is it transferable? Do you engage society? Nowadays, the topic of, what do they call it now? Societal research, or citizen science. Yes, citizen science. So involving citizens in your science, depending on the discipline that you are in, is also becoming very important. Like, for example, an example of a citizen science project would be if you, for example, an ecologist, and you use citizens to collect certain types of ecological data. Then they can also get involved in research. They understand why it's so important and why basically the public needs to fund us. We also need to think about who is doing the research and what research is being done. Then, besides understanding your country's type of policies and regulations related to research, also your institutional regulations related to research is very important. One also needs to be cognizant of the Sustainable Development Goals. Incorporate that also in your research. Tackle one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and also be aware of your country or our country's national development plan. These are important because we have challenges and we can use research to address and solve that type of challenge. Now, the next thing, as I already mentioned, we need to understand our institution. What are the rules and regulations for performing research? What are the requirements for your thesis? How should it be formatted? When is the deadlines for submission of your work? So all of these type of things are very important to consider. Also, for example, when you're doing a master's or when you're doing a PhD, how many publications should be published as part of your work to attain that degree? Very important, also understand your discipline, the language that is being used, experts in that field, prominent researchers, conferences that are being presented in that field, and also be careful not to attend predatory conferences, but rather conferences that are, sound and that is valid and good for you to attend. Elsevier also advertises a lot of diverse conferences in different fields, and sometimes journals will also host conferences, and then you can have a look at that. As I already said, the knowledge here that I'm giving to you is only, one always needs to complement your knowledge with other materials out there, because the time that we have here is very short to discuss this very wide topic. So one always needs to complement your knowledge by reading other books and other resources. Like, for example, there's a lot of articles on the Google Scholar, and there's also a section on Nature careers in the Nature Journal that is very, very good. It provides you with a lot of different articles providing career advice. So I would really advise you to go and read that. There's a lot of personal experiences where scientists or young researchers talk about their experiences, and it's very useful to go and read that. These two books are also very important. I would highly suggest you go and find it. This one, Charting a Course for a Successful Research Career, you can find on the Elsevier website. And a PhD is Not Enough is another excellent book that provides you with a good overview of how to plan and tackle your PhD and some important considerations. Because remember, a PhD is not only just about doing the science and publishing it. There's a lot more to learn, like how to present well, how to write grants, how to supervise students even. So if you need a copy of this book, you are welcome to contact us. I'll provide a copy of that one. Now, the next important aspect is also to understand the phases of the research. How do we do research? Because when you first enter an honors or a master's, you're still young. You don't really know where to start and all of this. So one need to understand how the phases of the research work. So research will start by a lot of critical thinking. One needs to think a lot, and one also needs to be creative in your thinking. One needs to identify a problem, and for that purpose, one needs to review the literature. What is there? What is the gaps in knowledge that I am going to fill? And how can I apply this knowledge also to tackle societal challenges? Then, very important, we need to plan. We need to choose our study design, our methodology. This is important. This is sometimes what students also, I also didn't do this when I first started out because I didn't know it. That before you even start a study, it's very important to look at the methodology. What do people do? What type of techniques do they use? What type of chemicals they use? Because sometimes people will start a study and then they will realize, oh no, I don't have this chemical. I need to order it. And then the ordering may take months. That can delay you. So even before you start, you check the lab that you're going to work at. Do they have the equipment? Do they have the chemicals? So that you can do your research in the required time. So effective planning is very important. Planning, you can also put up a Gantt chart for yourself. Planning, like, when am I going to do my literature review? I'm going to do this in 2-3 months. When am I going to do my thesis write-up? Remember, you can already also start writing up your thesis while you are busy doing your experiments. And then the other important thing that I forgot to mention is that right at the beginning also, one needs to start planning also your methodology. As I said, if you have all of the chemicals and when is the deadline for submission and all of that. So also very important when you're doing, for example, a medical study, you will need to get ethical clearance before you even start with the study. Sometimes you need to get ethical clearance from, this is in most instances true, that you need to get ethical clearance from your institution, but also from the hospital that you're going to do, or the facility that you're going to do the research, depending on what type of medical research you are doing. For example, if you're going to do a clinical trial, there will be different processes that you have to follow. You will have to recruit participants. This can also take some time to collect data. You also have to get that ethical clearance. So these are all things that one needs to think about and plan before you even study. And then also think about how you analyze the data. This is extremely important. Are you going to consult a statistician? This is very important. Someone who's an expert in analyzing data that can advise you, for example, on which p-values to choose, which statistical test to use. For example, normally you will basically at a first start compare, use descriptive statistics just to summarize your data, and then you'll go on to the more complicated multivariate or secondary statistical analysis of your data. And even when you are doing this first phase of choosing the topic and discipline or whatever, when you are looking at the literature, you get already an idea of what your field or your research involves, what methodologies used, where papers are published, in which journals, and what statistical tests are being used. So when you read the papers, it's very important to critically look at all this type of information. Now, we're still on the topic of understanding the steps in identifying a research question. So first, you will outline for yourself your area of interest. Then obviously you'll choose your topic. Then very important, you need to narrow down your topic, and then you develop your research problem, your aims, your objectives, and your purpose of your study. Now, while you're doing all of this, you need to be cognizant of your environment. Remember what we mentioned. We need to understand what is our country's goals, our institutional policies. We need to be very curious. We can also be adventurous. Remember, innovation is also nowadays very important in research. We need to ask a lot of questions. We need to talk to a lot of our colleagues, senior colleagues, even other postgraduate students, to discuss our ideas and our thoughts. And we need to read very, very widely, right? So this is the general overview of things one needs to consider. Now, the other important thing to consider when you're starting to choose a topic is we have to do research right. This is very important. And nowadays, we need to do wow research. Research that is really novel, is compelling, and most important, the mistake most people do is they do a PhD to get the doctor or whatever in front of their name. When you choose a study, you have to be passionate about what you do, because remember, this is going to take up a considerable time of your life, of your career, and you need to choose a topic that you really like, that you see yourself building a career in. Sometimes this doesn't always work. Maybe along your career path you will change disciplines. That also happens. Let's go back to this one. Right. So when we choose a topic or a discipline or a field that we're going to do our research in, we have to choose very, very carefully. So this is very, very important. Remember what we talked about. The research will comprise approximately 2 to 3, 4, even sometimes 6 years of your life. It will define where you're going to apply for jobs. And if you're going to work in the same area, if you're going to go into academia, it's important that you be passionate about this and you see a long-term career for yourself in this. So now, with a bit more focus on Now we're going to go into a bit more detail about actually choosing the topic and the research discipline, the strategy. So let's look at some definitions first. So we need to understand a subject, that will be the general contents of the study, and the topic of the research will be the specific issue that you're going to study, that you're going to answer, if it's a research question that you're going to answer. Then we need to understand, if we're going to select a specific idea or a project, we need to know, is this already funded, or does it still need to be funded in future? Sometimes you can go to a supervisor or suggest a topic that you are interested in, or sometimes the supervisor may suggest a topic to you that he or she will be able to assist you with. Or, as I already mentioned, you can also suggest your own topic. Okay, but then remember to adopt the proper strategies so that you can really survive and thrive and excel in your specific topic, right? So now let us look at, where do you get ideas for research? Where do I go to? Where do I find research ideas? Sometimes if you look at departmental websites, you will see some projects already being advertised, right? Then we can also go to the literature, right? Look in, normally at the end of the articles, in the discussion and the conclusion sections, researchers will write recommendations for future research. They will also address the limitations of a study, and that can give you good ideas of how you can, create your own topic or build on this past research with a novel idea to address a specific problem. Sometimes you can also approach the authors of a paper to ask them more details about the research, or maybe ask about if you can join their lab and so forth. So when one is looking at the literature also, one need to search widely. Remember what we talked about, looking at different search engines, having the correct search strings to get specific articles. When you search the internet in general for information, remember to use a trustworthy website. Sometimes funding bodies will also provide good ideas for research topic. Sometimes even the news, if you will watch the news, CNN, BBC, Our News, you will get some ideas of what people are doing, because sometimes they will announce that this research group has discovered this new major finding, and then it may be interesting for you, and then you can contact them. You can also search university websites. Sometimes departmental websites will have projects advertised. You can have a look at that. You can also think about, it's always a good idea. It's not so popular in academia, but it's always a good idea to collaborate with industry. This will give you potential opportunities for internship. You will also be exposed to job opportunities potential, and the industry can also fund your project. So look also, what problems are industry experiencing that you can help address with your research. And sometimes there's things in the world that's happening, and that can also create research on its own, like the COVID-19. That created different research ideas in microbiology, immunology, and also more interdisciplinary types of work like our social sciences. Climate change also is becoming now a very hot topic. Then remember to interact with other senior staff members, other postgraduate students. You can discuss your potential ideas with them, but also be careful, because sometimes, not always, people can go with the idea and then they can run with it. There was a very, very interesting article in the Nature Career section about one researcher. He was a young researcher, he applied for funding, and then someone else took his idea. So be careful of how you handle this. Interact with trustworthy staff, your mentors, your supervisors, etc. Then you can also form a group among yourselves. You can organize brainstorming sessions. You can build a mind map. Build your academic network, attend conferences. You get a lot of ideas from attending conferences, and you can also meet potential supervisors there. Okay, look at the current and future research needs or the conference theme. So this is all about getting different ideas. Then also be creative. There's a lot of different opportunities out there. When you talk to people, also conversations may lead to creativity. Remember, disciplines also have different jargon and they have kind of their own language. So when we kind of speak to one another, this can also generate ideas. This can generate knowledge. I remember once, I was speaking to a physicist about my work, which is mainly in biology, and he gave me actually very interesting insights of how I can adapt my work and actually collaborate with physicists to complement the work and see it from a different angle. So when you talk to different people in different disciplines, this can also create and innovate your ideas for potential research projects. When you go to conferences, talk to people. Networking is very important, and how to learn how to network is also another skill that you need to learn. For example, you need to learn how to develop, for example, an elevator pitch, how to summarize what you're interested in, or if you're already a PhD student, then you need to talk to someone or present your work in a very succinct and interesting way to get them interested in well. Right? So there's a lot of different ways to get ideas, but be creative about it. Then there's also been some models developed, like, for example, this flash of brilliance model, where you just wake up one day with a bright idea. And remember, bright ideas may appear anywhere if you're doing exercise, when you get up in the morning. Sometimes this happens to people. Otherwise, it doesn't happen that often. Then we get the apprentice model also, where your supervisor has a lot of different topics that you can choose from, and he will suggest one or several others that you can work on. This can save you some time, but be careful. It has to be something that you are passionate about. Don't do it just because someone else suggested. You have to think, is it interesting for you? Do you see a future in this topic? And then also several other students may be working on the same project. Now, there's another model here called the Phoenix model. You'll already be working on some projects, but you will just be redeveloping them or re-implementing a common framework. Be careful for this one. You may just be working on the same thing for a very, very long time. Then this one, and here's another one, the stapler model. You will work on a number of different small projects. For example, if you are being an intern in a lab, that's also a good way to see how a potential lab will accommodate you, what type of projects they are involved in, and the supervisory style of the supervisor, that's also good. This can maybe turn into a series of different papers, but remember, it may be difficult to find the golden line in all of this. Remember, when you do research, it has to build on one another, so that you can basically build a career in this, and you have to tie sometimes all of these different topics that you are working on together into a kind of central theme. Then there's another one, the synthesis model, where you read some of the papers in other subfields or different fields to see what can interest you. And you look for different places to apply this insight. Be careful also, you can spend a lot of time reading papers, and there may not always be useful connections when you follow this type of approach. Okay. Here's another method, the expanded term model. You can take a project course, and this can give you some perspective of or you could, for example, attend a seminar or some conference or something that you may get ideas. This may also, if you're already in the research and then you start doing a lot of different other projects, like for example, I remember when I was doing my PhD, I got interested in another project that was not really related to my PhD work, and this kind of distracted me from my PhD work. So also be careful for that. And now, once you have your idea, once you've talked to a supervisor, once you've talked to someone at a conference, or you saw an interesting idea in a paper, now you start to convert your ideas, right? Now you start to critically think about it, how you can improve it, how you can innovate it. Is it a topic that can be done in a specific discipline, or can you collaborate with other disciplines? Then it will form a nice interdisciplinary research where you not only learn from your own discipline, but you also learn a skill of how to do interdisciplinary research when you work outside of your own discipline and you collaborate with different people from different disciplines. Then you can learn an amazing amount of information and skills as well, how to do interdisciplinary research. That is very, very important nowadays in tackling grand challenges that we are experiencing, like climate change, and COVID-19 and this type of thing. So obviously, when also you have your idea, maybe you already have a supervisor that gave this idea to you, or you need to start looking for a potential supervisor. Then when you finally have all of this, then you start to narrow your topic. Right? Say, for example, if you're going to work, you're interested in working or performing research on unemployment in India. For example, this may be a bit broad. Always narrow down your topic. If it's too broad, then it may get very complicated. You may struggle to have focus and you may be overwhelmed with a lot of different aspects of the work. Rather, decide, okay, employment, for example, in which industry? In the mining industry, will it be employment among graduates, undergraduate, etc.? So always narrow down your topic and create the focus. And by creating focus, you need to ask different questions. For example, like what is going on with what? What is the meaning of this research? What influences or causes a certain aspect in your research? What is the processes by which this research has been done or should be done, like the methodology? Which factors can influence this? For example, in medicine, if you're working with a group of patients and you are studying a specific disease, you need to think about what is the confounding factors that can influence this disease. For example, if people have a heart problem, then if your study is about studying this, for example, then you maybe want to include factors that may aggravate this. For example, if you are studying patients taking a specific medication and they're having heart problem, then you may want to exclude perhaps patients that are smoking or using drugs because this can aggravate their heart problem. So there's a lot of things to think about when you start developing your question and your topic. Also think about the basic type of questions, like who will be involved, the type of, for example, patients, or your samples, which samples will you use, what techniques will you use, where will you be doing it, do you need to use external labs, or do you need to use external techniques to complement your research that your institution may not have? How much will it cost? Do you need to travel for that? Do you need to get funding? So there's a lot of different questions you need to start asking yourself. And it's also important, you can also innovate your topic by solving just a problem that already exists, or something that is just unknown, or you're just repeating something someone else that is not always good. When you're doing research, you need to think out of the box. Okay? Then, when you've now decided on your topic or your research question or your discipline, one needs to start asking also yourself, when you have now your topic of interest, is it scientific? is it novel? Very, very important. What contribution will it make to the knowledge base? Very important also, how can it be applied? Now, remember, not all research can be applied. Sometimes people only do basic or what we call fundamental research, but that is very important to help do later on also applied research that can be used not only for society, for communities, but also in industry and to develop policies. So think about what types of research also you're going to do. For example, you can do purely basic research to understand a system that can be later applied, or you can mix fundamental and applied research based on this will depend on the type of topic that you're tackling and the type of discipline. Very, very important. What is the societal impact and what is the personal relevance for you? How does it affect you? Are you passionate about this? Do you see yourself in a career for this? What is your perspectives? Is it fundable? This is very important. Is it feasible? Will you be able to finish this thing in time? And remember what we talked about, narrowing it down, because if you do a very broad topic, there may be too much overwhelming information and questions to tackle. So narrow it down so that you can finish it in time. Okay, do you have funding for this? This is extremely important also. Do you have a bursary? Does your supervisor has planning? What if something happens in future? A machine may break. One needs to do contingency planning also. So these are all important things to basically think about. Then also when we're looking at the topic, we need to think about the ethics of it. Remember when we're working with humans, when we're doing a study, for example, a clinical trial, when we're testing a medication or something like this, or if we're doing a retrospective review of patient files to see trends in certain diseases or risk factors. This type of research, this retrospective review type of work is normal minimal risk research. So that you still need to apply for ethical clearance, but the ethical clearance can be fast tracked. So remember, when we're doing anything with humans or animals, we need to apply for institutional ethical clearance. And this can take some time. Remember, there's also deadlines. Some institutions will post deadlines for when a protocol and all the documents needs to be submitted, and then it will be reviewed by a committee. They may come back to you with questions where you have to edit it, and it include maybe some additional forms or information before it is eventually approved. And remember, once you have ethical clearance, it needs to be renewed also yearly or depending on your institutional guidelines. And also, in the whole package of ethical clearance, there needs to be a whole range of documents. There needs to be informed consent forms that participants will have to sign, informing them of the purpose of the study. You'll have to declare that data will not be shared. Data will be kept confidential. So there's different aspects of this, but normally the institution will provide guidelines for you for this. But remember, one needs to be cognizant about this. Don't do research that will be a risk to the environment. Think also about data confidentiality. This is very important. For example, if you're working with patients, you need to anonymize the data. The files need to be accessible, maybe by only certain people, so that sensitive information is not leaked. Then remember also, when you're working on a topic, it needs to be moral. We need to think about inclusivity and diversity as well, and research integrity also needs to be followed. So these are all type of things we need to remember when we are working, when we are planning, when we are tackling that question. Again, you will be asking yourself a lot of questions. Very, very important. You must be passionate about this. You want to make a difference with this research, so you have to be fascinated and passionate about this topic that you have chosen. Very important. Do you have the necessary research skills to do this? If you don't have, it's not a train smash. You attend workshops, you learn experimental skills, You can learn. Remember, there's a difference between a research skill and a soft skill. So a research skill will be where you learn how to publish papers, how to present at conferences, how to analyze data, that kind of thing, how to summarize data, also in Excel sheet, that kind of thing. But the soft skill about research will also be how to manage your work, like project management, how to lead your work well. Leadership is also very important, that skill to learn. So ask yourself, you need to know yourself before you do the research. Very important, will you complete the project in time? Will the research still be current when you finish? Will it be fundable? Will there be enough financial resources like funding for the project consumables to attend conferences? Will there be funding for yourself to cover your own financial needs? And then also, will you be able to gain access to the data, right? Some other questions you need to ask yourself, very important, will the examination institute standards be met by the specific topic? Does it contain issues that may be unethical? Very important. Also, how do you answer or compile the type of question? That will have a session a bit later on, but you also need to think about whether your topic is clear. Don't remember what we talked about. Don't do too broad topic. Keep it focused. Very important again, will it provide fresh insights? The novelty aspect is again coming up here. Then very, very important, does it match your career goals? Right? Again, this topic of are you enthusiastic about it? Can you sustain it? Also very important, is this question or topic answerable? Can you solve the problem? Okay, is it really worth doing? Can it lead to other research problems? Is it manageable? And can it make an original contribution to the field? Okay, can you become competent in this field? Ask yourself also, by completing this project, what type of skills will you gain in this? And when it's finished, will you have gained independent skills to contribute to this discipline? Again, think about your future in this field. So let's look at kind of choosing and selecting your project. You will look at the literature, you can search the internet, you can check university websites. Also learn more detail about the discipline, the jargon that is being used, type of research that is being used. If you're interested in a specific discipline, is there opportunities for collaborating with other disciplines, doing interdisciplinary types of research? Look at papers. It's very important to read good papers in high impact journals. You can also speak to, for example, if you're going to a type of multidisciplinary conference and there's industry professionals there, you can also have a chat with them. Maybe you can complement your work to problems linked in industry. Attend those seminars, presentations when you are being invited. Attend this. You can learn a lot from this. Even at the very early career stage, you already get introduced in the type of research being done in a field, etc. Build your networks. And when you eventually have that topic, you obviously need to have a supervisor, or you may already have a supervisor if this person posed the project to you. Remember, it needs to be very scientific. It needs to be socially applicable. You need to be interested in that topic. You need to be able to complete this in time. And also it needs to be ethical, right? You can also follow this Friends type of format where you think about the feasibility. Do you have the finances? Is there sufficient equipment and consumables to finish this? Is your project relevant? Is it scientifically ethical? Is it novel? Does it have some application? Remember, if you're going to do purely basic research, which is just as important, there may not always be an application. Is it interesting to you? Again, what we mentioned, remember this ethical clearance. remember your topic should also not be too broad, not too narrow, but nicely focused, right? Then also, if you need to ask yourself, are you going to work in one discipline, or is there opportunity for collaborating with other fields, with other departments that you can really do like multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary research? And then your supervisor. This is also important, choosing the correct supervisor who will have the knowledge, the interest, and the involvement to help you grow your study and your brand. Now, before we go into selecting a supervisor, it's also very important to understand the different types of research methodologies. So I'm going to go into detail about some, whereas I'm just going to give now a summary of the different types. So as we've already talked about, we get the pure or the basic, or the people also call it the fundamental research, where you do very purely academic research. And then we can also do the applied research, where we apply our research to address a specific societal problem or contribute to policy development. Then we also get exploratory research, descriptive research, correlation types of research. We also get quantitative and qualitative research. That may be, for qualitative research is more in the social sciences, whereas quantitative is more related to the science type of disciplines. Now, if we focus a little bit more, as we already mentioned, if we look at the different categories, the general category, we get the quantitative and the qualitative research. If we look at the nature of the type of research that we're going to do, it can either be descriptive or analytical. If we think about the purpose of this research, it can either be applied or fundamental, or also called basic research. And then we also get the research type, that can be primary or secondary research. For example, primary research, where you will generate first-time data, and secondary research will be something like reanalyzing that data. For example, systematic review. So systematic reviews is very common in medical sciences, but sometimes it's also used in the science, the basic sciences, where you basically go back to the literature. You do a very thorough literature review, where you follow a specific methodology and use specific research strings, and then you use different statistical models to reanalyze the data, and then you produce papers called meta-analysis and systematic reviews. And that is more related to medical research, to type of summarize medical data to answer specific health questions. Then we can also look at the design, research design, and that can be stratified into exploratory and conclusive research. Now, we also get other research types that we call causal, and this can maybe be related to analytical research. We already discussed this, primary or secondary. And it's important to understand this so that we can complement our research question with the correct methodology to use. Then there's also something like deductive versus inductive research. Now, inductive reasoning, it basically aims to developing a theory, while deductive reasoning aims at testing an existing theory. Okay, conceptual versus empirical. So conceptual research will include unique thoughts and ideas, whereas empirical research will include phenomena that are observable and can be measured. Then we also get conclusive versus exploratory. Exploratory research will refer to the investigation of a research problem that may not always be so clearly defined or understood, whereas the conclusive research is the type of research that is used to yield information to reach certain conclusions. Then qualitative and quantitative. So quantitative will be more where you use numerical or actual data, where you do experiments that generate data. And qualitative will be more personal accounts. This is more related to the social sciences. So sometimes people will also write in the paper, this is a a qualitative study where we looked at so-and-so, or they will highlight in the research paper this study addresses both aspects of fundamental and applied research, where we studied this and this, and we answered this and this, right? So it's important also. One will also notice that there's a difference between the methodology and the research design. So, for example, if we are doing, for example, clinical research, we will want to mention that, for example, we are in the heading in your methodology where you discuss the design of your study. You will, for example, mention that this is a longitudinal study where you test a certain medication, or it's a retrospective study where you look at patient files, patient data. So just be cognizant of the differences in that. Then also we will get descriptive versus analytical study, exploratory versus conclusive study. So the descriptive research will describe, compare, and measure data, where the analytical research will focus on more the cause and effect. Exploratory studies or research will mostly be a type of investigation of a research problem that is not really clearly defined. I think we already addressed that. Then some studies will also be related to surveys where, for example, in education, students may complete different surveys to address the efficiency of a specific course. Then in your paper, then you will write in the introduction and the methods that this is a type of a survey that aim to address this and this objective, etc. A case study is also something else. These last two, the case study and the longitudinal and clinical studies, is more in the medical field. So a case study is where you will be working on a specific patient that had, for example, a unique reaction to a specific medication. And this is very important in, for example, the medical field, where it is actually published in journals as a case report. Sometimes you will also get case series where you look at a series of patients that had maybe an adverse effect to a certain medication, or had a very rare and very unique condition that you describe for the first time. And this type of studies are very informative to specific communities. And remember, this type of methodology may also be field specific. So some may be related to the social sciences, whereas others will be related to the basic sciences, and whereas others will be more for the medical studies, like case studies, case series, and longitudinal and clinical studies. So let's look into a bit more detail into some examples of how the different types of research is described. Again, descriptive versus analytical. So in the descriptive study, you do before you know what you're doing. And this type of research, if you're doing a descriptive study, will lead to ideas and help in defining a problem, whereas analytical research will give you the final answers to your question. It will explore also the research topic on different levels. So there's different types of definitions for this type of different research methodologies. Then we'll also go into a bit more detail on applied versus fundamental research and how you also can combine the two. Because remember, applied research is also often underscored by fundamental aspects of or the basic research that we need to do before we can actually apply it. Then we already discussed the qualitative and the quantitative, and the conceptual and the empirical. We also touched on that. And here there's also a more detailed description of the exploratory research, descriptive research, and the causal research. And here they characterize it by different factors here. So here, for example, the exploratory research can be a research question, whereas descriptive research will also have a research question, whereas causal research will more have a research hypothesis, right? When is exploratory research, for example, conducted at the early stage, whereas descriptive is more at the later stages of decision making, or if you want to influence policy, then there's also different approaches to the different types of research. Like the exploratory will be more unstructured, the descriptive will be more structured. Here's some examples also. For example, exploratory will be our sales are declining for no reason. What kind of new products are customers interested in? Descriptive will be something like what kind of people patronize our stores, what product features are most important to our customers. And causal, for example, will consumers buy more products? Which of two advertising campaigns will be more effective? And then they also describe here the type of nature of results that you will get while following these types of research. So here again, there's some definitions, some descriptions about differences between qualitative and quantitative. Remember, we mentioned that quantitative, you work with data, whereas qualitative, you will describe qualities, opinions, or feelings that is normally gained by the use of surveys. The qualitative is more good for when you're formulating hypotheses, and maybe gathering information from a smaller group of subjects, like, for example, when you want to see the efficiency of a new course that you developed, for example. Whereas the quantitative can be more for large-scale studies where you conduct different types of statistical analysis. And also for the quantitative, how you summarize this as well will be in tables using different statistical programs where you can use descriptive statistics to summarize the means and standard deviations, and more the complicated secondary statistics where you do multivariate analysis, where you can also use models to see trends in between different variables, if there's correlations, if there's different interrelations between certain data points. Then the question example, for example, if you're doing quantitative research, will be something like, did you buy ice cream today? Whereas for qualitative is, why did you buy the ice cream today? Okay, so there's some examples of that. And here's some more summary between qualitative and quantitative. So if you want to go and read about a little bit about this and understand this more, there's a lot of different definitions for this and how this is described. So I'm not going to go in detail about that. Let's now go on to fundamental versus applied research. Now it's remember to know that when we do applied research, it's often underscored by basic research. So basic research is also receiving less and less attention, but it is also very, very important, right? So the purpose of basic research will mainly be to expand knowledge. For example, if you're working in the business field, it results in universal principles related to processes, right? And findings is maybe of significance and value to society in general, right? The context, look at the context now. It's normally undertaken by people based in universities. It may be determined by the researcher, and it's very flexible, whereas applied, for example, when you're doing a project for industry, you may have very tight time schedules. The objectives may not be defined by you, but by someone else that may be funding this. And the purpose would be to maybe understand, for example, if you are working in the business field, to improve the understanding of particular business or management problem. And this will basically result in a solution to a problem. So for applied research, you will use knowledge, basic knowledge, to answer a specific problem that one has. Now the timelines here, basic research can be longer than applied research, because if we are, for example, in applied research collaborating with industry, they need results fast to answer a specific problem. Right? Here's some more details about the description of fundamental versus applied research, the type of environments that it's in, performed in, the nature of how it is done, and the aims, basically. So here, this paragraph or this table nicely summarizes some more differences in that. And remember, in general, basic research wants to contribute to the knowledge base, whereas applied, we want to solve a particular problem. We want to tackle a grand challenge. Basic research may be theoretical or exploratory type of research, whereas the applied may be more practical and descriptive. Basic may also have a wider scope, where applied has a more narrow scope. Okay, basic research will also be more curiosity driven, whereas the applied will be client driven. Okay, so there's some distinct differences. Now, here is some examples of papers that have been published. Let's look at this one. Elucidating the wound signals mechanism in fresh cut produce, scientific implications and opportunities for practical application and novel technology. So we are using here knowledge from basic research to apply it to improve wound healing. Okay? So that we can apply the knowledge that we have in the horticultural industry. Okay, here's some more examples. For example, here we will have a system. We will study its DNA, for example. We will do proteomics on it. We will understand its metabolomics. This is also related to this previous article that we discussed just now on post-harvest quality. So once, say for example, we have a system here like a fruit, we need to understand the fundamental research of factors that can influence the quality. But to really understand that, we need to study the system as a whole. We need to study, for example, the physiology of the plant, its genomics, its protein mechanisms, its metabolism that lead to the decay of the fruit. And once we understand these basic principles of the system, we can use it for applied knowledge. Okay, so this is just some examples of how fundamental and applied research can be combined. Now let's look at interdisciplinarity in research. So this is a useful article that I would recommend you to go and read. It's in the New Scientist. And remember what we also discussed right at the beginning, interdisciplinary research is becoming more and more important. And why is this? Because we are having a lot of different challenges in the world, and for us to effectively address these challenges, the different disciplines needs to come together and collaborate more. Okay, this can also be linked, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research can also be linked back to fundamental research, where you do it within the discipline, and then the apply research, where you apply what you've learned in the fundamental research. You can apply this by combining the knowledge of different multi or interdisciplines. Now let's look at this image here to try and understand what is interdisciplinary research. So here we see that the research problem is basically intersectional with all of this disciplinary theories here, whereas multidisciplinary research is we have a research problem that we can use by that we can answer by collaboration between different separate disciplines, whereas here the disciplines basically intersect. So there's a lot of definitions on the internet for interdisciplinary research, for multidisciplinary research, and also for transdisciplinary research. So one needs to be also cognizant that these types of research exists, And this is also good for you when you're starting out, or especially when you're going into PhDs or postdocs, to also try and do more multidisciplinary work where you collaborate with different fields. For example, we are in the field of nanosciences. Now, nanoscience is a very specific field, and that is also kind of multidisciplinary because it encompasses aspects of physics, of chemistry. You have to understand chemistry when you synthesize the nanoparticles, but then there's also the applied aspect of it that can go into multidisciplinary types of research. For example, if we synthesize a nanoparticle using a specific chemical approach, it may be useful to be applied, for example, as a biosensor in agriculture, or a type of nanopesticide in agriculture. And then that's also then moves us towards more doing a multi or interdisciplinary types of research. So specific fields may also be multidisciplinary, like nanosciences. So here's another example of transdisciplinarity in research. That is, transdisciplinarity is more related to finding solutions to very, very complex problems. So on the one side, you will have your societal problem, like, for example, climate change, where you need to use new information, basic sciences, to try and understand a specific system that links to a societal problem. You also need to disseminate the knowledge in that field by publishing it, and then you bring it all together to produce new knowledge and to answer complex questions. Right, here's some more examples, like, for example, here we can see again your interdisciplinarity. If you have a disaster, this can affect your natural, your social, your built environment, and this can also be interlinked to technological systems, right? So here we can see the multidisciplinary kind of overview of the fields, but this can actually interlink to answer then the very challenging question here by forming a type of interdisciplinary network. And if you think about science, if you perform, for example, if you're in the field of urban planning, this is very wide because this may branch into the social sciences. It may branch into even agriculture if you're doing urban agriculture. So it can be very wide. Some of the disciplines that you select, you can incorporate the interdisciplinary aspect into that when you're doing your project. Right, here's some more examples showing basic interlinkages between different fields and how it's all interlinked. Like I said also about the nano. Nano also encompasses your chemistry, your material science, a bit of engineering, a bit of physics, also a bit of computer science when you're using modeling to understand synthesis of nanoparticles. And this section here can all be linked to your biomedical sciences. For example, if you're testing the application of nanoparticles as an anti-cancer agent, this can again move into health and social issues, addressing that, and the business and the management of creating nanotech companies. So basically science is all interconnected, but traditionally the way we have been doing science have been very siloed. We like to say in our own discipline, do our basic research. And so sometimes you will get that doing interdisciplinary research may be very challenging because you need a lot of different skill sets to understand different disciplines, but it may be also very, very rewarding. And then one needs to be very careful weighing the pros and the cons of this, because in academia, ideally, you want to gain knowledge in a specific field and progress your career in that. There may not be so many job opportunities, or the criteria also for promotion may be very strictly aligned to disciplinary knowledge. Okay, this is some example here that I'm going to skip for the time being, as we're seeing, I'm seeing we're almost running out of time and there's still a lot to address. Here's also some example where they discuss multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity in research, and how it can be used in education and also in policy. So this is a nice article to read. So now let's move on to the most important topic. So now when you choose your supervisor or your mentor, you might have already decided on a topic, or he or she may have already given you a topic, or you can approach them if you have a topic that you want to discuss with them. Now, remember, there's different types of supervisory styles. A supervisor may be both your supervisor that leads you and also your mentor, whereas sometimes it's necessary to choose a supervisor, a mentor out of your specific field. Now, remember, a mentor is more like a person who will mentor your career development, whereas, for example, you have challenges about your project, it's a trustworthy person that you can approach to speak to for advice, whereas the supervisor may not always have time for this. But this also depends on the personality of the supervisor. So mentoring and coaching, this type of supervisory style is nice. Also, where the supervisor coaches you, grows you as a student. He will learn you what he knows, and you mentoring is also where your knowledge, you also have a little bit of knowledge already about a specific field, and then your supervisor's knowledge complements that knowledge that you have. Coaching will be more when you have less knowledge, and then the supervisor will train you. Where it is this type of apprenticeship and where the supervisor is not involved at all, avoid this type of selecting such a type of supervisor. Now, when you're also selecting your supervisor, it's important to think about, is this project that he or she is suggesting to me, is it worth doing? Will the PI or the supervisor be able to help me? Will he be available to help me? Also, is it aligned with his work and institutional priorities? Is there money for this? How does your supervisor work? Does he like working alone? Does he work? Is there some projects that also align with community? There's a lot of things to think about when you are selecting your supervisor. Now, here's also a diagram that explains the different types of supervision and also supervision versus mentoring. So a mentor is more there for your career and your psychosocial support. Like when you have challenges, then it's a trustworthy person you go to, you ask for advice, and this person you develop a relationship with, you have regular meetings with them, and they help you through the whole process. This is basically your role model, your coach that encourages you. Sorry, let me just close this email. And also that provides you professional problem solving and a different skill set. Whereas the supervisor will be more guiding you to effectively finish your PhD thesis, right? He will take the lead. He will lead you. You will have performance assessment with this person, and you will have to set up a type of education or career development plan with this person. Sometimes the supervisor and the mentor can be the same person. Sometimes it can be a different person. So when you're selecting your supervisor, you need to choose very, very carefully, right? Because this person will strongly influence the success and quality of your degree. So this is also something that is very important to be aware of, that sometimes supervisors are very busy. So you need to have regular contact with your supervisor, request meetings, ask them for advice, ask them for career help. If your supervisor is too busy, then you need to get yourself a mentor that can help you with this. And you need to have regular meetings with this person. And in your studies also, You have to learn yourself. Attend a lot of workshops. There's a lot of skills that you need to learn besides just doing the research and publishing papers. You need to learn how to use different instruments. You need to learn how to write papers. You need to learn how to publish it. You need to learn how to talk and present at conferences, how to make a poster. So all of this you need to learn, and you need to attend this type of work. And the supervisor may not always have time for this. You need to learn to do this yourself. So attend the workshops. If UNISA has a workshop, attend this. If there's another workshop internationally, attend this so that you can grow yourself. Okay? Remember, a wrong choice or the wrong supervisor can be really disastrous. So choose your supervision very, very, very carefully. This is a skill that you need to learn. You need to read widely also how to select a good supervisor. We'll go into some details now. So when you look at potential supervisor, do they have the same interest as you? Look at their website, look at their publications, right? You can approach the supervisor with a topic that you are interested in, or they may already have topics that they can suggest you. Okay, also very important, check. You can do an internship in the lab, and then you can find out about how is the lab culture, how is the supervisory style, what instruments are available, who this person is collaborating with. Are they doing, for example, applied projects, basic type of fundamental science projects? How much do they publish? Is there opportunities for attending conferences and growing your career? So know the setup, and remember, when you're choosing a supervisor, very important, this person has to have the same interest as you, right? Now, before you choose, also, you need to talk to trusted people. You can talk to your own supervisor if you want to do a topic in a different fields, what supervisors or which persons or collaborators would he or she recommend you. You can talk to professors or students that you admire for advice, which would be a good supervisor. And look at also this person's personality. This is very important. Look at their reputation. What type of interpersonal relations do they have? And what type of supervisory style do they have? Right? Now, also very important, align your expectations with the supervisor's expectations. Are you a good fit for their goals, their working style, and can they serve also as a mentor for you? Now, very, very important. You have to talk about money. Does this person have funding for you? What opportunities are there for fellowships? Is there enough funding to get consumables? To visit overseas labs, to complement your work with other techniques that are not available here. So this one needs to be very, very clear about, is there funding? Funding to attend conferences, funding to grow your career, funding for consumables, funding for different instruments. Check this and openly ask this, because if you're doing a study, then you need to have financial backup, both for you and for your work. As I already mentioned, it's very important that there's professional development opportunities. Is there, for example, at the Institute also, for example, is there opportunities for developing both your research and your soft skills? Remember, as a researcher, you don't only need to have research skills, but you must have the soft skills as well. So how to manage a project, how to lead a project well. There's many different soft skills. Also mental health skills. This is also important. How to cope with disappointment. I mean, disappointment sometimes is part of science. Papers get rejected, funding application get rejected, but how to effectively deal with that is also important to learn. As we already mentioned, what career opportunities and what is expected of you. How many publications must you have when you hand in your PhD? Ask this. Ask this. Should I have 2 publications? Should I have 3 publications? But as a young student, it's important to remember to publish. Publishing is very important for your career. So publish as many papers as possible, right? Before you choose someone, also interview this person. You have to prepare questions and you also have to know yourself. And remember, the PhD is a partnership. It takes two people to tango. You need to put the effort in and the supervisor need to put the effort in. Also find out about their working style compatibility. What is their work-life approach? Okay, this is very important. Then you also need to think about, as we already talked about, the lab size. Will you be working in a lab that is more big, that is run by a senior person that will have more connections, more funding, or you will be working in a smaller lab of a younger person that may have more time for you and maybe have different ideas or approaches to research because of their situation or their experience in the field. So these are all very, very important factors to think about. Also talk to the students, ask them questions. How often do you meet with your supervisor? How long does it take for them to get back to you when you submitted a draft to them? Also, when you are submitting drafts to your supervisor, don't hand in the thesis a week before it needs to be submitted. Hand the person sections of your paper and go through this in a monthly, weekly basis. Sit with them, ask them, I've written the abstract, can you give me comment on this? How can I improve this? Then when you're done with the literature review, you go to them, you ask them, is this well written? How can I improve it? And remember, when you're doing also the literature review, you need to go back to the literature. You need to continue this, checking the literature for new papers. There may be published a new paper that you can insert and update your literature review. So ask questions. Also, how does your supervisor react to interruptions? Because this will also affect you. Life happens, and will the supervisor be supportive of this, right? What is the supervisor's weakness? You need to speak to people, understand the supervisor. You can also speak to past students. They will also have a lot of different experience. Now, other important thing is you need to understand the environment that you're getting yourself into. If you're going overseas, is there support? For example, if you have children, is there childcare support? Is there a language issue? For example, if you have a specific hobby that you like to do, like if you want to surf, will this institution be close to the ocean? So think about the holistic experience of the environment, supervisor style, this type of students, the type of funding available, etc. Then, very, very important, trust your gut. When you talk to this person, when you ask them questions, listen to your gut, okay? And don't only go and see one person. Sorry. Go and see many people. Get the best supervisor fit to perfectly help you to progress into your research, okay? Here's also a nice paper that you can read, choosing a research project and a research mentor, right? It's also important to put up a checklist that you can discuss with your supervisor. For example, how many years will you be doing the PhD in? What are the funding conditions? Is your funding only for 3 years? Then you need to complete the degree in 3 years. What will your salary be? What is expected of the number of publications? What is the thesis format, the length? You need to publish some papers before you submit the thesis. Find out about defense, how this will happen, and attend also defense of other students. How frequently you will meet with them. You will have to discuss this. What deliverables are expected of you to deliver, and all of this. So this is a checklist that you can use, but be in contact with your supervisor and be also responsible for your own research. Then if you want to choose a mentor, this is also extremely important. And this is a person basically that will help you with your psychosocial development and your career development. So this can be either your supervisor or it can be a different person, and they can really help you to get also professional connections. They can be a source for your letter of recommendation, and you can get honest feedback on your strengths and the areas that you need to improve, and how you need, what skills you need to focus on, the soft and the hard science skills, like how to write a paper. You need to find a person who is right for you and who will meet your needs. For example, if you need a person to advise you on a specific scientific method or how to write papers, then you choose a person that you really feel comfortable in advising you about that. You can also choose someone that you admire. You can use your network. You can also meet people at conferences that you can ask to be your mentor after you've given them a brief overview of your research in the form of an elevator pitch. So learn also how to effectively do that. Then you must request often meetings with them. You want to meet with the supervisor, and one day you can also apply to be a successful mentor. So you will also learn from this person that is mentoring you how to effectively mentor someone else. Now you're in this type of relationship, you need to set goals for the mentorship. What will be the goals of this professional relationship? Will there be constructive criticism for you to focus on certain areas? Remember, you should meet regularly to discuss your progress, specific issues that you are having, and how you're going to solve this. You need to create agendas for the meeting. And basically, you need to be honest with this person and establish also boundaries, right? So there's some more guidance about this. So the basic summary of someone who's a mentor was someone who will coach you in your personal life to achieve your success, to give you direction, to motivate and train you, and to support you through this whole process. This can be your supervisor or a different person, remember? Then also there's some tips for choosing or being a good mentor. This is someone that is committed to helping you. Very important. That has the wisdom also that will help you. And also you need to show gratitude for this person. And this person also needs to have specific skills to coach you. This person should also have empathy with your situation. If you're having a difficult situation, for example, health situation, they need to have patience to learn you certain techniques. So these are all things you need to be cognizant of. So basically, let's now summarize everything we learned. You can go through this presentation in your own time again. There's a lot we covered. And as I said, also consult other sources. That's also important. So understand your country and your institutional goals when you're doing or selecting a specific research topic. Do you see yourself a future in this? Will it be funded? Can it be publishable? You can use this friends model to select and choose your topic. Then it's important to understand different types of research methodologies, like, for example, the fundamental and applied and the qualitative and the quantitative, and which one will align best with your topic, and how to choose your supervisor and your mentor very effectively. So go to conferences, use your networks, meet new people, go visit their labs so that you can see what it looks like, if there's available instruments, if there's available equipment, if there's enough funding for you, if there's opportunity for career development. Will this person be both your supervisor and your mentor, or do you need to select someone else that will really guide you and help you to develop a very, very good career? So thank you very much.